Uh, so very good evening to all of you, those who've joined and will be joining on the Zoom. And we're live on Facebook right now. So there are many others who would be joining us on the Facebook also. Welcome to yet another Zoom call organized by Jungle Bells. Jungle Bells is an exclusive women's wildlife venture. We are into wildlife related activities, conservation and wildlife tours. Before we begin, I would like to request all of you to turn off your cameras and switch off your microphones. If you have any questions for the guest, please type them in the chat box and we will address them after their talk. Also, if you want to receive further communication from us about our events, please type your email addresses and phone numbers in the chat box. So basically, we do this webinars for more of, getting forth the personalities who are working in the field of wildlife and conservation. We do understand that nowadays online and Zoom calls and meetings are not so much, in trend, but we have kept continuing with the webinars with a documentation purpose. We will upload this webinar on the YouTube and circulated ahead to the community. So they're very well aware of a lot of people who are doing good work in wildlife. So without further ado, we would start off with the webinar of today. And I would like to introduce the speaker for today's webinar. So Dr. Sejal Worah. Dr. Sejal Worah has worked in the field of environmental conservation and sustainable development for over 30 years. She's currently program director at WWF India in New Delhi. In this position, she manages and provides strategic direction to a large interdisciplinary team working on diverse issues. Her primary area of interest is the interface between sustainable development and nature conservation in light of India's rapidly developing economy and the challenges of climate change. Throughout her career, Sejal has worked in more than 20 countries in South and Southeast Asia, the Pacific, and East Africa. She has been associated with some international and regional organizations and serves on various government committees and advisory boards in India and internationally. She is also the co-founder and director of Jabarkhet Nature Reserve in her home state of Uttarakhand, which is private reserve demonstrating the links between forest restoration, sustainable tourism, and local livelihood development. Well, just to give you, before we start with Sejal, I mean, I had met her at one of visits to Jabarkhet, which was organized by CASFOS, and I was very much impressed by what the work she's been doing. And I thought this is the best way because we are a women's venture, and why not, immediately get someone who is doing so much of work in wildlife and conservation. So that's how I connected with her, and she gladly accepted in spite of her hectic and, really busy schedule. Thank you, Sejal. We are really happy to have you on board. Yeah. So we can directly start off. You can start right away. You're on mute. Yes.
Thanks for inviting me, and it's a pleasure to be here and to give this talk. Let me see if I can share my presentation. Okay, can you see this?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Okay. Fine. All right. So just to kick off, I'm going to share with you the story of how we set up Jabarkhet and where we are going and where we are headed. It's been a personal journey, and I've been in the field of conservation all my life. But about a decade or little more than a decade ago, I decided that it's important to not just talk about conservation, but to actually demonstrate it and do it on the ground. And that's how the seed of Jabarkhet started in my life journey. I live in Missouri. I've grown up in Missouri, and I've been working abroad and in India, all over India for many years. And I just felt that it's important to do something in your own backyard, where you live. And the opportunity presented itself, and I grabbed it. So I'll just quickly get started and explain to you, what this journey has been. So Jabarkhet is actually quite unique in the sense that it's a private nature reserve, of which there are not many in India. India doesn't really have a system of private nature reserves, unlike other countries, say South Africa and some of the other countries where they do have private nature reserves. The land that it is set up on, this is the conservation area, is actually privately owned. And basically, about a decade and a half ago, I met up with the owner of this land and suggested to him that maybe we should look at a legacy, since he has so much land which is lying unused. He was living in Bombay. Maybe setting up a conservation area might be a good way to use this land and to leave it for future generations. Surprisingly, he agreed. Not many people would agree to set aside 100 acres of land for conservation without any guarantee of what's going to come out of it. At that time, we didn't really have a plan. We didn't have a business plan. We didn't really know what we were getting into. All I knew was that it was important to conserve this area, and we'll think of how to do it later. Once I got the agreement from him, we started thinking about what next. So this is basically how the vision of Jabarkhet has evolved. The idea is to create a conservation model which talks to local people, enhances local livelihoods, supports responsible tourism because there needs to be some way to generate revenue, and also has a positive impact on the ecosystem. So we were trying to combine multiple objectives, but actually, the main uh, primary kind of hidden objective, if you want to call it that, is that in Uttarakhand and in other parts of India, there are privately owned forests and there are community owned forests, which many of the owners don't really see a value in. So they're always trying to sell them, develop it, find a way to extract as much revenue as possible from this. And the idea here that we wanted to demonstrate is that actually, if you leave it back to nature, nature will pay for itself.
Right.
And you will find a way to see how this land will nurture not just nature but will also nurture people
Yeah.
and livelihoods, and that's what we wanted to demonstrate. So that was the kind of hidden agenda behind setting up Jabarkhet. So basically, the situation was that there had been many years of neglect. So because the owner of this land lived in Bombay, forestry operations stopped in the 80s because Uttarakhand stopped logging above 1,000 meters. So before that, this forest was generating revenue. After that, the forest did not generate revenue, so the owner saw no value in it, and it was just left for itself and it was neglected. As a result of this, there was completely unregulated use, right? The land didn't belong to anybody.
Mm.
So people just used it as they wanted. There was grazing, cutting, hunting, poaching, picnics, trash. I mean, Joe, it was just like a free for all, pretty much, and it was in pretty bad shape. And as a result of that, of course, there was, we were left with a degraded forest, there was infestation of weeds, water sources were drying up, wildlife was scarce. And this was the situation in which we started the project about 12, 13 years ago. Just to give you some visuals of what it looked like. So, as I said, the forest was badly degraded. There was trash all over. This is a common situation, right? You see this all over India where
Yeah.
people are not looking after a place, it doesn't belong to anybody. Eupatorium is an exotic weed. It has pretty much taken over the hillsides in the Himalayas. It doesn't allow anything else to grow. Overgrazing, cattle everywhere, lopping of trees, uh, collection of firewood, collection of grass, cutting. I mean, just pretty much you name it, it was going on in this forest, and of course hunting as well. There were some 150 snares that we removed from the forest when we started this
Yeah.
project. So this is the condition that we actually found the forest in when we started. And of course, fires, forest fires, sort of happening almost every year, and nobody really bothered to put them out because the land doesn't belong to the government, doesn't belong to the community, doesn't the landowner is not there. So essentially, it was a sad situation of a neglected and kind of orphan forest, if you
Often,
want to
yeah,
call
that's
it
what I
that.
thought. Yeah.
And of course, this is right next door to Jabarkhet. This is the situation that you see. This is Masuri, and my biggest fear was this: that if nobody looks after this land, then it's sooner or later people are going to just grab it and it'll become something like this. So
Right.
so that was the situation in which we found ourselves. So then we decided to turn it around. Started, of course, with a lot of meetings with the current land users. So, had meetings with the villagers, with the communities, trying to explain the vision to them and trying to explain that in the long term, this would be good for them if they joined hands in this venture. But of course, it's very hard to convince people. Everybody was convinced that I was a land grabber and
Mm.
that I was trying to do something that would harm them. And of course, there were, fights and, as I said, lot of conflict initially in the first year, just trying to explain what we were trying to do. I won't go into the details of that. But let me just say that it turned around, managed to convince them. And then, of course, they became partners. The local community and the local residents became partners in the venture. And we started the restoration work. First thing we did was look at the water supply and the springs, the natural springs we tried to regenerate. We cleaned up the trash and the weeds, some, I don't know, 600 or 700 kilos of trash, removed 3 or 4 tons of weeds,
Wow. Okay.
created small little wildlife habitats, trying to, bring the wildlife back. Removed, as I said, some 100 odd snares that were in the forest for hunting over the years. And then we also did some initial surveys to try and find out what exactly is in this forest, so that
Mm.
we can start looking at how to regenerate it. And we did all these surveys of the ferns, the mosses, the grasses, all of that, including the moths. We did surveys of trying to identify the butterflies and moths. So there was a lot of baseline work, and I must say, lots and lots of people helped at this stage. We didn't have a lot of funding. This was a very low cost model. We were really depending on experts and volunteers to give their time, which they freely gave. So I'm very grateful for that. We then had to come up with some sort of a business model, because one thing the owner, when he handed this over to me as a project, he did say that it needs to be viable financially. There
Mm.
needs to be a business model, because otherwise it will not be sustainable. And I thought those were very wise words. And
Mm.
it put a challenge to me, because he said, I give you 5 years to break even and come up with a model. So that was the challenge that he put before us, and that was a good thing, because we had to figure out how are we going to generate revenue from this model. And so the idea that we had was simply that we would have nature trails, that we would train the local youth and the young boys and girls, and have them take people, because Missouri is a tourist town, so we hoped that we would
Right.
get some footfall, and we would take people on nature trails. We were determined not to have any construction, no homestays, no camping, no Maggie stalls, no food, just walks. And the walks
Yeah.
could be birding, there could be photography, there could be all kinds of things. But at the end of the day, we wanted to have a very light model, because the footfall was only to generate revenue. Our primary objective was recovery and restoration of the forest, and we wanted the two to go hand in hand. But we needed the revenue, obviously, to have the team and to pay them and to have some money for the restoration. So we started, we identified some, and the trails were all, by the way, all these trails were actually trails used by either cows or villagers to collect firewood or whatever. We did not create any new trails. We just looked at existing pathways in the forest and identified what made them special and created this walk.
Yeah.
Simple signages that were created for the trails. We then trained as I said, the local youth in bird watching and nature guiding. And we also created jobs for the local community. And the first people we hired was women. Even till today, these women are our security force. So they are the ones who keep an eye and keep a watch, because we are right on the road. Sometimes people just walk in, they trash the place, they come and drink alcohol, all kinds of stuff. And these women are my fierce guardians,
Mhm.
who keep people away. We also created some nature interpretation materials. So we identified, as I said, the flora and fauna, and we created this material so that people could actually also educate themselves. So it's not just walking in the forest; it's also learning
Yeah.
about nature and learning about the forest. This was a map that we created, which people can use and go for walks on their own. We have signages. So if people want to explore the reserve on their own, they can also do that, or they can go with a guide. And very minimal infrastructure. As I said, we did not want any major infrastructure. It was all very just based out of salvaged wood from the forest and here and there, very minimal stuff. So that's it. That's how it looks. Um, and then we, about exactly 10 years ago, in May 2015, we inaugurated the reserve. We wanted to get both government support and media support, just so that
Right.
people know that something like this is happening. So this was 10 years ago. We garnered support from the government. Nobody really knew what was going on. Nobody
Mm.
knew what a private nature reserve means, but everyone was excited about the idea, and it's evolved over time. And we started. So this was the initial phase, and we had guided walks. We had experts coming and giving walks and talks. On the right hand side at the bottom, you see one of our local boys taking
Yeah.
kids out for a walk, and also for people to just explore on their own. So we had all kinds of options. If you want to learn, go with an expert, you can do that. If you just want to go with a guide, you can do that. Or if you want to just explore the forest on your own with our little booklets and maps, you can also do that. What was the response? So first of all, our water sources, our spring is now perennial. The trails have no trash on them. You'll only find flowers, leaves, mosses, ferns
Yeah.
on the trail. This is one of the feedback we get, is that this is amazing because we don't find a single piece of trash anywhere in the forest or on the trails. Nature started coming back. This was the most exciting part for me, is the way nature bounces back. You see these trees on the left, they've been lopped, they've been cut, they've been hacked, but you give them a little bit of space and breathing room, and they start regenerating and recovering. So, a
Right.
lot of the recovery of the forest has been just natural regeneration, just removing the pressure and the forest coming back. We've done some planting, but 80% of the recovery is just natural. On the right hand side, you see how the grasses and the ground orchids and the ground vegetation immediately in the first year of removing pressure from grazing and other pressures, the ground vegetation started coming back. You can see that just immediately
Wow.
everything starts bouncing back.
Yeah.
Uh, this is the canopy that it looks like today. I showed you an earlier picture where the canopy was completely broken, lopped. Today, if you look at the canopy of the forest, it's a lush, green, very, very beautiful, forest. We started documenting. As I said, we found over 40 species of ferns. Remember, this is only 100 acres that we're talking about. And
Right.
the variety of biodiversity is incredible. We have over 100 varieties of mushroom. This is the mushroom season. We take people on mushroom walks at this time of the year. We have little booklets where they can identify the mushrooms. It's great fun for kids. It's a whole new discovery of a world that you didn't know existed on the ground. Flowering plants, about 350 odd species of flowering plants, including orchids and other interesting flora. Grasses, again, something that was undiscovered. And we've again found something like 40 odd species of grass that's growing in this forest. Bird life is extremely rich, about 160, 170 odd species of birds. Um, of both Himalayan birds and migratory birds that come down from the high Himalayas in winter. Very rich bird life. Insects, as I said, we've also been documenting butterflies, moths, and insects. It seems to be a hotspot for cicadas. We haven't had the survey done
Oh,
yet, but at
okay.
some point we'll do spiders, we'll do cicadas, we'll get there. But otherwise, I think over 200 species of moths, again 150 species of butterflies. It's remarkable how nature recovers when you allow it to. And then, of course, this was what we created, a little safe havens inside the forest. And anybody who knows wildlife biology knows that wildlife needs three things: it needs food, water, and shelter. So we tried to create these little safe spots with water. And because we were removing the weeds, the grasses all came back. And what we started seeing is that the wildlife started coming back. So initially, we started seeing wildlife coming in the night. So nocturnal
Mm-hmm.
creatures, there's a civet, there's a leopard cat, there's a porcupine, there's a Himalayan fox. And we started getting these cryptic creatures in our cameras. Of course, we were very excited when we started seeing the wildlife coming back. That's wild boar coming to the waterhole.
Wow.
That's a
Yeah.
jackal. That's barking deer. That's a gural. That's a hare. I mean, remember we are at 8,000 feet, so it's quite
Yeah.
high for
Yeah.
some of these animals. A jungle cat, which I didn't expect to see
Mhm.
this high up in the mountains. Sambar, rare, but we see it occasionally coming into the forest here. And bears
Oh,
started coming back. This was very exciting for us because people living in Mussoorie had told us that bears have disappeared. They've not been seen for 40, 50 years. And we started getting bears in our camera, which was very exciting. And, you know, just to
Yeah.
see the wildlife all coming back. Of course, leopards roaming around in these forests. Um, but then, you know, what got even more interesting after a year or so is that the wildlife started appearing in the daytime. So initially we had them coming, you know, carefully at night, disappearing. Slowly, I think as they realized that this is a safe place, we started seeing lots of wildlife in the daytime, and this was very exciting as well, because generally you don't see things like wild boar in
Yeah.
daytime. But we started seeing a lot of exciting new wildlife species. So this is, you know, yellow-throated martins, goral in the daytime, jackals coming to the waterhole in daytime, leopard cats coming in the daytime, bears, again, very unusual to see bears coming to a forest in the daytime. The sambar and daylight, leopards walking around. Leopards are seen in our cameras all through the day. It doesn't
Wow.
matter what time of
Okay.
day it is. You know, 1 o'clock in the afternoon, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock.
Amazing.
They're there everywhere. It's rare to see them. They
Yeah.
hide when they see groups coming. But when we check our cameras, we find that the leopards are walking either just behind us or just in front of us, but keeping a distance. So
Yeah.
we've had no conflict, we've had no issues, but we do know that all kinds of wildlife are using the same trails that we are walking on. Then we started seeing interesting behavior. So we also started recognizing the importance of water and water holes even in the middle of winter, because we see that lots of animals still need water even in winter. So we
Yeah.
made sure that we are keeping our water holes filled all through the year, and we have to fill them manually. So it's quite a lot of work. Uh,
Okay.
we also started seeing interesting interactions between different wildlife species. So here you see a kakad, a barking deer, and a Kalich pheasant at a
Well,
waterhole. They're almost giving alarm calls to each other. Here's a Kalich and a langur sitting together quite happily at the waterhole. Here's a langur and a gural. Here's a barking deer with a whole covey of pheasants, male, female, you know, nine
wow.
or ten pheasants in the waterhole, and the. We really
Lovely.
don't know what's going on. We haven't done the research, but we do know that
Okay.
they're interacting quite a lot. This
Okay.
is a gural and a barking deer both at the waterhole at the same time. This is a Koklas pheasant, which is rarer than the Kalich
That's,
and the
yeah.
gural.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then, of course, the final sort of what shall I say, evidence for us that what we are doing is working is to see breeding animals. So
Right.
we started seeing a lot of the wildlife with young. You know, here's a wild boar with piglets. Here's a leopard cat with kittens. And these are very interesting because we start seeing that here's a bear with a cub in the waterhole. Here's a gural with a young one. And then what makes Jabarkhet really unique is the fact that we are actually in the city limits. So these are the lights
Yeah.
of Missouri
Correct.
that you see.
Correct.
This is Landor, and we are literally the next hill. So essentially, we are within the city limits of Missouri, and we have a thriving ecosystem literally on the edge of the city, which has been created. There's a leopard happily chilling, again with the lights of Missouri in the background. There's a bear, again with the lights of Missouri in the background. And this is a recent photograph which I'm very excited about. Three leopards in one frame. Uh,
Oh, that's
and
a
this is,
wow.
you know,
I mean,
you'll rarely see this even in one of our more famous national parks, to actually see three leopards in one frame. But this is a camera trap photo that was taken a couple of years ago, where we are seeing three leopards in one frame. So, all in all, I think just to say that this is now a thriving wildlife habitat from what was a degraded patch of forest. And then, of course, this is our, as I said, our business model. We haven't really counted exactly, but we've had some 35,000 visitors so far. It's actually a light footfall because this is over a period of about 10 years, 2 years, of course, going off to COVID. But what's important is that the revenue that's being generated is adequate to maintain the area. So it's plowed right back into the maintenance of the reserve and the salaries of the team. But we are actually generating enough revenue to make it a viable business model, which is very important because unless we were able to show a viable model, people are not going to replicate this,
right.
and we want people to replicate it. Also generated a lot of income for the whole local economy has changed. By the way, this dhaba that we used to patronize is now a fancy cafe. Uh,
Okay.
and similar things. I mean, I'm not sure whether that's good or bad, but it's certainly good for the local economy that lots of homestays, cafes,
Yeah.
etc., have proliferated here. As I said, we did not want to create that because our job was not to make money, but we wanted the local economy to thrive, and that's essentially what's happening. Is the local economy is thriving, we are
Right.
doing okay. It's a kind of a win-win situation. The forest is doing well, the wildlife is doing well. So we are hoping that this is a model which is a real win-win situation. The other thing that's important is it's also created ownership for the local communities. I
Right.
mentioned earlier about the fires, and nobody would bother about the fires because people basically said, "Hamara jungle nahi hai. It's your forest. You look
Um,
after it."
yeah.
But now it's very different. You know, the minute there's a hint of smoke or fire, I get 10 calls saying, Jaldi se aao, you know, we are going, you come later. And they're already there by the time I reach, you know, trying to put out the fire. And that's really good that there has been this strong ownership of the local people. The other important thing is that we've become a sort of a model, and lots of people are coming to learn
Mm.
about this. You know, everything from the forest department itself is coming. I mean, this is a group on the left hand side is the IFS officers who've come from Dehradun to learn about the model. But what is very exciting to me is the women on the right. These are sarpanches from villages in Uttarakhand who have
Oh,
all come to see how this model could be implemented in their village. Because in Uttarakhand, there's a custom of having one panchayat. So there are community forests in many villages in the hills. So they came and said, look, we also have a forest. Why can't we do something similar? And we were like, of course, you must do something similar, and we can help you to conserve your forests and for the forests to pay back and generate revenue. So they've come to look at how they can also get their forests to become more interesting and conserve them. The exciting other thing, of course, is that my team now, my boys who we started off as nature guides are now trainers. So they started as trainees,
wow.
and now, you know, this is Virender, who's one of the nature guides from a local village, and he's training a whole bunch of people from villages in Uttarakhand on nature guiding and how to become a good nature guide, bird watching, etc., etc. So it's a great peer-to-peer learning model that we have where the youngsters from one village are training youngsters from another village.
Right.
And then, you know, it's just to show that there's been a lot of people who've written up about us, and it's we've got a lot of publicity, but we don't advertise. So it's all word of mouth. We are not, you know, in a big way advertising the place. But even without that, uh, what was surprising to me that if you look on TripAdvisor, then Jabarkhet today has become the number three destination in Missouri, which is pretty remarkable
Wow.
for a place that didn't exist
Yeah.
10 years ago. So there is, you know, people told me that your business model will never work because people are not going to pay to go for
Yeah.
walks in the forest. They can walk anywhere. Why would they
Mm.
come and walk in your forest and pay you for it? But obviously, it's working. Obviously, people are learning something, they're appreciating it, they're visiting us, they're paying us, and we are able to keep the model going as a result of it. So, touch wood, it seems to be doing all right. We're also excited that we are one of the 13 OECMs recognized by the Government of India. So, an OECM is basically areas which are not under the government,
Yeah.
but which are set up as conservation models. So, Jabarkhet is one of the first round of 13 OECMs that was recognized by the Ministry of Environment in India. We also recently got an award from Outlook. This is Virender, who's our nature guide, who went to Kutch all the way to receive the award.
Me.
And we got a gold award for responsible tourism as well. So that's pretty nice to get recognition. And then we just celebrated our 10th anniversary. So this is a photograph
Oh,
from our 10th anniversary event. And what was heartening for us was, 10 years ago when we started, there was so much skepticism, there was so much suspicion. People were just wondering, you know, what's going on here? What is she up to? And 10 years down the road, when we celebrated our 10th anniversary, there was so much support. There was an outpouring of support from the locals, from people in Missouri, from the town, from the tourism industry. Everybody who earlier thought that, you know, they were not quite sure what we were up to. There's been a very nice feeling of now something that is part of the fabric of Missouri rather than being something that's an outlier. However, I just want to say that the challenges never end. So this is just outside of Jabarkhet. This is one of the villages on the outskirts of Jabarkhet, and this is a road that's been recently cut through the forest and through the mountain to connect this village. This is happening all over the Himalayas, and you can't really say no because everybody needs a road. People need roads. People need access. Uh, but the problem we have is with the way it's done. So this is a
Mm,
very badly built road. It has buried people's fields. It's buried water sources. It's cut through the forest, and there are probably better ways of building roads in the hills.
right.
And so our challenge is really how do we work with people and convince people that conservation and development can go hand in hand,
Yeah.
that it doesn't need to be one or the other. So that's a continuous and ongoing challenge. And finally, I'll just end by saying that this is the future, right? This is my team, and these are the people from the local area around, and these are the people with whom the future of places like Jabarkhet and indeed the development of the state lies. So the more of them that you can take along with you, the more of them you can convince. These are champions, so this is a handful of champions. We need many more of these.
Correct.
And hopefully they will also encourage their own peers, and they will spread the message in terms of the importance of conserving the forests in the state. So I'll end there and hand over back to you, Himangi.
Yes. Yeah. So that was a huge this thing, Sejal. I've already seen the place and
Yeah.
I was so impressed with it. Frankly, it's not just a very flattering thing that I'm doing right now, but it is really commendable that the way it is managed. I would like to tell everyone that there is certain discipline also that goes in there with do's and don'ts as regards to when you are walking or on nature trails or your behavior in certain case, because we owe something to the nature and in a responsible way, what we always say, that not to disturb the harmony of nature. So it was really wonderful. I wanted to bring this forth because I would like many more people to go and visit the place when they go closer there, or make a special visit and see how you've done it all. And this thing, so of course there are, we spoke about challenges, but you said one of them was the road developments that are happening right now. But this is a very cliche one. I understand gender is not in this thing and all, but have you faced any issues being a woman in trying to convince a lot of stakeholders right now who are there with you? Uh, have anyone really hindered the way, in the way that your thought process was?
So, this is a question I get asked a lot. Being in conservation, being a woman,
Yeah,
what were the challenges that you faced, etc. So I can say that, when I started my career in conservation, there were not that many women. Now there's, of course, a lot more, and it's very
right,
exciting to see
right.
so many women in the field of conservation. But I can tell you that, 35, 40 years ago when I started, it was a lonely place. And
Yeah,
there weren't, so I was looked at with a lot of suspicion, a lot of derision, a lot of people commenting negatively on me. What
yeah,
does she think she's doing? I mean, I was living alone in a forest. I was driving a jeep. I was, going out at night looking for wildlife. I mean, all kinds of crazy stuff, right? That you
yeah,
do. And there were so I didn't bear the brunt of it so much, but my parents did.
yeah,
And I still recall, a lot of people telling my parents, "What are you doing with your daughter? You're letting her run wild. She'll go this, she'll go all kinds of." And I have to say that they stayed firm. And the
yeah,
reason why I am where I am, I would say, is a lot because of the support that I had from my parents. They never questioned, what I wanted to do, because they could see that I was passionate about what I wanted to do, and they let me follow my path. What
right.
uh, what changed? I have to say, so yeah. So sometimes being a woman, you do have to cross that extra hurdle. But I do believe, and this is on a lighter note, I do believe that, since I let my hair go gray,
Yeah,
since I now have the age thing on me,
yeah,
nobody questions me. So,
yeah,
so having, so, I actually turned gray very young. I must have been about 40, 45.
yeah,
I started turning gray. And I didn't start coloring it like most people do, because I saw the advantage. I realized that, when I walk into a
yeah,
government meeting, or I walk into a room full of senior bureaucrats, or things,
Yeah,
having a, sort of semi-distinguished looking gray-haired lady walking in, they don't question you
they
that
don't
much.
question. Yeah,
So,
correct.
so I'm sorry, but I've used that to my advantage. And yeah, so yes, I have faced some, but nothing insurmountable. I think, the disadvantages of gender can be balanced by your own conviction, your own commitment, your own integrity. Then
Yeah.
people will not question it so much. So you do have to balance it.
Correct, correct.
Yeah.
So another one offline, I was just thinking, during what kept you motivated during the entire, the process of, you know, going ahead with Jabarkhet and look your vision. Okay, sometimes there would be because of the challenges or whatsoever, you were driving it alone or you had a team, but you were the forerunner for it. So sometimes there are, times as well that you feel, what am I doing, or is it really going to work? So what was that motivating thing? I mean, apart from uh, the target that you wanted to convert this, so what kept you on going basically?
I really don't know. I mean, yeah. So this is again something that people ask me a lot. And it's not just with Jabarkhet. It's with conservation in general.
Right, right.
It's a challenge, and yesterday itself I was having a meeting, with a long lost friend,
Yeah.
and we met after many years, and he asked me exactly that. He says, it's not depressing. All the news around is so bad. How
Yeah,
do you
that's what
keep
correct.
going? How do you keep yourself motivated? And people ask me that, that given
Yeah,
everything, how do you still keep your enthusiasm? How do you still keep your motivation? And for me, it's the focusing on the wins. Don't
yeah,
focus on the losses, because yes, there are losses, and yes, it gets disheartening, but every loss is balanced by some kind of a win, some kind of a positivity, some kind of change in the positive direction. And actually, that's what keeps me going, because when I see the positive change happening, I see hope.
yeah,
And then I see, okay, if this has happened, then something better can also happen. If this has happened, something. And Jabarkhet you're right, I was alone. There was
yeah,
nobody behind me. That I had no backing financially. I had no backing, with any big organization. This was completely separate from my work with WWF. I had two village uh, people, two people from faraway villages who worked with me, Rajendra ji and one other lady, and that
yeah,
was it. It was just three of us, and we made it happen. And today we're a team of 15 people, and um, so I think incremental steps. Don't
right,
hope and don't expect major gains,
right.
but take those incremental step, and the path will open up for you.
Right, right. That's a good one. Thank you so much. So, environmental education, okay, this is a very important thing because awareness, and only awareness, which we also believe in. So how do you feel, this education will happen? I mean, what are the right ways to do it? And like we said, nature interpretation. So how do you believe it can be taken forward more? Because awareness is something, I don't know. I mean, it just needs to be
Yeah.
brought in.
So, environment education can take so many different forms. It can be
Right,
taught in a
right.
classroom, or it
Yeah,
can be taught in a forest.
correct.
To me, the game changer for me, and I know for my whole generation
Mm.
of my peers and colleagues who are all in conservation today, was the nature camps that WWF used to run in the
Right,
80s.
right,
So, you go for one of those camps, you spend a week in the forest,
yeah,
interacting with nature, learning about nature firsthand. You will never be the same again.
yeah,
So to me, if you're going to do education on nature and environment, you have to immerse yourself in it. It cannot be done only in a classroom. So the
right.
classroom stuff is great. There's excellent books now. There's good, digital, virtual training and teaching materials. All of that is fantastic. It's changed dramatically from the time when
Mm,
I was learning. But I still
mm,
strongly believe that there is nothing like immersing yourself in nature as a teacher. So any
right,
chance that anybody gets, even if it's just spending 3 days out in the
right.
forest, living in a tent, camping out, being in nature, uh, it will be the best teacher. So I believe that every environment education component needs to have a real life experiential part to it as well.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. And Yeah, that is it. I mean, I think we've covered most of the questions that,
Thanks.
we had spoken to you about. And um, amazing. I mean, I would again tell people to, go whenever they go towards that side of, maybe Uttarakhand or Mussoorie or whatever, to make sure that they do visit this place. It's worth every bit of it. And I came to know because Casfos sent me, and that's how, I could know about that place. So I'm sure by through this medium and documenting this and putting it up and circulating, more and more people will be aware of it to come and visit, which will obviously help Jabarkhet, and they'll also help in their awareness, as we said. That is it. So,
Absolutely. Thank you so
uh,
much. Thanks for giving the opportunity and for helping to
yeah,
spread the word.
our pleasure, our pleasure. So we have Sanjay. He's a part of our team and is a rock solid support for our venture also. So I would request Sanjay to say a few words. Vote of thanks. Sanjay, are you around? I think he is. Sanjay, are you around? Yeah, I don't think he's just logged in. Anyways, so yeah, so thank you so much, Sejal.
Pleasure.
I think I want to come again, and
Yeah,
I
please
would
do.
get my woman also, urban woman from here. So definitely we'll look at planning something like that to visit your this thing. And again, I feel really happy that you could take time out for us. I mean, I know your hectic schedule. I mean, you're working like a WWF and your Jabarkhet. I can totally understand. So thank you so much for accepting our
Pleasure.
invite. And
Thank you.
stay connected. Let us hope that I can make a trip again sometime in the near future.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you, Sejal.
Bye.
And bye bye.